Good evening. From the Great Plains of northern Montana and across the United States, American Prairie welcomes you to the presentation of the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize. Now coming to you tonight from his home in New Hampshire, America's storyteller, Ken Burns.
Good evening. It's a privilege to participate once again in the presentation of the American Heritage Prize. When American Prairie first told me they wanted to name an American Heritage Prize after me, I was, of course, honored. But in the years since, I've been more deeply moved to see this prize go to such extraordinary Americans as the acclaimed biographer and historian David McCullough, the visionary artist and architect Maya Lin, and the distinguished Native American poet and novelist N. Scott Momaday. Each of them has contributed something unique and powerful to the American scene. In making my films, I've found a single thread that runs through the tapestry of our nation's history. Time and again, otherwise ordinary Americans have shown an extraordinary resilience in the face of obstacles and setbacks, a refusal to be daunted or deterred by the difficulty of their goals. We call it the indomitable American spirit. All of our past honorees are, in their own ways, exemplars of that spirit. And that's especially true of tonight's honoree, Wynton Marsalis. As a young musician, he set out to restore and preserve an essential part of our national heritage that was in danger of being lost. The traditions and discipline of jazz music, our unique national art form. It's most fitting that this award should be presented by American Prairie, for they too are fighting to restore and preserve something vital that is in danger of being lost, the great American Prairie. Along with my colleagues, I've made a career of telling our nation's story, but no account of America could be complete without an appreciation of the influence the land itself has had on us. In my film, Lewis and Clark, we followed the great explorers on their journey across the northern plains of Montana and experienced the same wonder they felt when they first beheld the vastness and abundant wildlife of the prairie, what Meriwether Lewis called scenes of visionary enchantment. But year by year, as American civilization spread west, planting the crops to feed a growing nation meant plowing up mile after mile of virgin grassland. The deer and the antelope and the great flocks of birds were forced to move on, and many species were threatened with extinction, including that most iconic native creature, the North American bison. As the frontier closed, the United States established the first national parks to save the scenic grandeur and unique wildlife of our land. In the title of our series, The National Parks, we quoted the author Wallace Stegner, who called the national parks America's best idea. The parks were and are a great idea, but the creators of the park system overlooked something. They preserved the forests and mountains, deserts and wetlands, but they neglected the most characteristic American scene of all, the prairie. Once again, Americans faced a seemingly impossible task, restoring and preserving a national treasure that appeared to be vanishing before our eyes, never to return. But once again, the indomitable American spirit rose to the occasion. 2 decades ago, American Prairie began the great work of preserving a large tract of the surviving grasslands of the northern plains. The women and men of American Prairie pursued an ingenious and uniquely American solution, strategically acquiring private lands to connect the existing public lands and create a seamless ecosystem where native species could return and thrive. Today, the great American Prairie is returning to life, and the goal of restoring this American Serengeti is within reach. It has taken the persistence, hard work, and generosity of this organization's founders, officers, board members, volunteers, and supporters like all of you watching tonight. There are so many of you to thank, but here to speak for us all is one who can try. Joining us tonight from New York City, the board chairman of American Prairie, George Matelich.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm George Matelich, the chairman of the American Prairie Board of Directors. In the few short years we've been presenting the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize, I've been thrilled with the public interest that this prize has generated. While this year's event cannot be held in person, coming to you virtually, as we are tonight, allows more of you to join us. We hope that in the years ahead you'll remain involved in the rewarding opportunity of preserving a national treasure, our irreplaceable prairie ecosystem. Over the years, my family and I have visited the reserve to appreciate its natural beauty and draw inspiration from the grandeur of this special wild place. I invite you to plan a visit soon. Tonight, American Prairie presents the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize. Named in honor of America's most revered documentary filmmaker, the prize celebrates individuals whose accomplishments have advanced our collective understanding of the indomitable American spirit. The prize recipient is selected annually by a national jury of leaders from across the country who share a deep appreciation of America's heritage. I'd like to thank some of the many supporters of the Reserve who make our work and this evening possible. First, I'd like to thank Jacqueline Badger Mars, who is a member of our National Board of Directors and a steadfast supporter of and ambassador for American Prairie. This is her 4th year serving on the National Prize Jury and her 3rd year as the event's presenting sponsor. Next year, she will be the chair of the National Jury. Thank you, Jackie, for your ongoing support of American Prairie and for making this virtual event possible. In addition, on behalf of the entire American Prairie Board, I would like to acknowledge and thank our National Jury Chair, Jerry Parsky, and all the members of our National Jury. And now we would like to show you some of the work American Prairie is doing.
What I want my son to learn is that people need nature and we can live in harmony with it. This project is only one of 4 places where we can save a temperate grassland, one of the least protected ecosystems in the world. We are losing a lot of wild places in the world, and what we're providing is a wild place for people to come out.
American Prairie Reserve is in a region that has been shaped by wildlife and people for millennia. We have a chance to preserve and protect that for the generations that follow us.
It would be the largest wildlife reserve in the continental United States, roughly the size of Connecticut, or equivalent to Yellowstone National Park and Glacier National Park put together.
This project brings together diverse people from diverse backgrounds who all can make an individual contribution to the building of American Prairie Reserve.
I'm a wildlife researcher. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm out here because I wanted to be in a pristine place. I wanted to be part of a big project that has a meaning, not only to my small research, but globally something that's much bigger than me.
National Geographic has named American Prairie Reserve as one of their last wild places. So we're not just doing wildlife restoration, ecosystem restoration here for the sake of this landscape. We're actually doing it to serve as a model for the world.
They're both adult females, right?
The gaze is forward. The projection is forward.
Oh, on the right?
This is a modern vision of modern humanity living alongside and coexisting with big, robust, healthy populations of wildlife.
Wanting to create a spot where the world is welcome, it's monumental, it's brave, and to watch people realize, almost look like they accidentally found something they didn't even know that they were looking for.
This place is a living, breathing entity already. We are not waiting for this place to be fully assembled in order to welcome the public to come out and enjoy it.
When I come out here, I do get very inspired. Protecting this land, not just here but everywhere around the world, is important.
This is a project of national and global importance that we at American Prairie Reserve cannot do alone. And it's a vital part of what our country will be for generations to come.
From the Great Plains of northern Montana, the CEO of American Prairie, Alison Fox.
The beautiful place you see all around me is one of the world's last remaining temperate grasslands. Millions of acres of unspoiled shortgrass prairie. This historic landscape, this American Serengeti, is an irreplaceable part of our heritage, a legacy we hope to pass on to future generations. Today, temperate grasslands like these are under threat around the world. In North America, millions of acres of intact prairie are lost to the plow each year, a landscape disappearing faster than the Amazon rainforest. As we confront the reality of climate change and the loss of biodiversity, we feel the ever more pressing need to preserve this vanishing ecosystem and the species that call it home. Prairies store carbon underground in their vast root networks. As a warming climate increases the frequency of fires across the planet, this fireproof carbon storage can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that drive global climate change. And as we protect the foundation of the landscape, we also provide a secure home for more than 300 species of birds, nearly 100 species of mammals, and 1,600 species of plants native to the region. Today, American Prairie Reserve is already 1/3 larger than Grand Teton National Park. Every year, thousands come to learn, to recreate, and to reflect. Even with the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, our overnight visitors grew by nearly 200% in 2020. And our multi-day prairie ecology program, the American Prairie Field School, will soon be introducing a new generation to the wonders of wildlife. Like the films of Ken Burns or the art of our prize recipients, American Prairie is for all of us, a national treasure today, tomorrow, and into the future. Although much of this landscape is intact and many of the native species continue to thrive, there is still restoration work to be done. We are very fortunate to be joined in our mission by a leading global institution, the Smithsonian. Every day, Smithsonian scientists and their university partners conduct research here that will guide our management decisions for many years to come. Through this work, we hope not only to restore the native plants and animals, but to honor the rich human history of the prairie and to support the human communities who cherish this landscape. We are working with Native American tribes, including our closest neighbors, the Aani and Nakota, with a tribal college, with the Economic Development Agency, and the Fish and Wildlife Department, to ensure that Indigenous communities also benefit from the presence of American Prairie. Collaboration with our ranching neighbors extends our habitat restoration goals well beyond the lands that we control. The land base of American Prairie is poised to grow still more in the years to come, and the work that lies ahead will be equally exciting. This summer, we will open our National Discovery Center, a place for education, collaboration, and inspiration. Our American Prairie Field School gives middle school students a chance to learn about the prairie firsthand by waking up to the smell of sage and the song of the meadowlarks. Every day, we at American Prairie are building something bigger than ourselves, something that will last far longer than our lifetimes. I can't imagine more rewarding work to be part of. If you haven't already, I hope you will consider joining us. Over the years, we've made many friends for American Prairie. It's my pleasure to introduce one of them to you now. Like tonight's honoree, Wynton Marsalis, she's an authentic American artist, an author, singer, and songwriter whose work reveals her own deep engagement with the life and landscape of America. Rosanne Cash.
Thank you, Alison. In the last year, we've all missed the people and places we long to visit: family, friends, museums and theaters, beloved vistas, and the great outdoors. For working musicians, we lost our live audiences as we gave up touring to shelter at home. And as well as the joy of seeing a full theater, we missed the little idiosyncrasies of each town we performed in and all the empty, beautiful, strange, and unique spaces in between. Much of our country has come to look the same, with strings of strip malls and fast food drive-ins, blocks of corporate buildings, and the chain hotels in which musicians live out part of our lives. So to come across the same landscape that our great-great-grandparents saw, and to see it as they did, to connect with generations past and those in the future, by experiencing the timelessness of our natural wonders, is a deeply inspiring experience, a communion with the landscape that has shaped us and with those who came before. In part, that is how we understand their character and our own. To truly know that which is unchanging changes us. We learn who we are by the very grounds we walk and by those who walked it before us. No one understands that more than Ken Burns, which is why it is so fitting that American Prairie gives this prize in his name. We see ourselves afresh as Americans through his eyes and the meticulous beauty of his films on the Civil War, baseball, the Roosevelts, the Brooklyn Bridge, jazz, the national parks, and most recently, country music. When I was first approached about working with him on that film, I was suspicious. Although I knew the greatness of his previous films, I couldn't imagine how he would understand the breadth and specificity of country music without having lived inside it, and see how America's story is in that music. Our dreams, our endurance, our longing for home, or just a feeling of home, travel, loss, and the threads that connect our individual melodies into one story and one song. While observing him and his superb team during the making of the film, seeing his humble curiosity and urgent desire to know, to understand, to recognize the thread in the music of those who retained their connection to the land and the past, and those who had persevered against all odds, it moved me profoundly. My expectations were far exceeded by the magnificent American epic he brought to the screen, and it is a cultural document for all time. Ken continually reminds us that we are the keepers of our own history, and to look deeply into our living libraries and the landscape in which they exist. This year of the pandemic has been a very dark time, but it is not the first dark time we've lived through. And we are a resilient people. Our indomitable spirit is shown again and again in the films of Ken Burns. And that is why he is here to present the American Heritage Prize, the visual historian of our nation, America's storyteller, and a living landmark himself, my friend, Ken Burns.
Thank you, Rosanne. It is, of course, impossible in a few minutes to reflect, let alone represent, the elegance, the sophistication, and the genius of tonight's honoree. I can think of no one more deserving of this award, which celebrates individuals who have enriched our culture and embodied an indomitable American spirit. A summary of just the highlights of his generous legacy would take far too long for tonight's abbreviated proceedings. Trumpeter extraordinaire, composer in the tradition of Ellington and Monk and Mingus, bandleader, writer, teacher, mentor, winner of the first Pulitzer Prize awarded to a jazz composer, founder of Jazz at Lincoln Center, recording artist, classical musician, son, father, lover, brother, friend. These are a few elements of his distinction, but they do just as much to obscure in their recitation as they do to illuminate. This is a great artist, not a word I bandy about lightly, a ferocious, disciplined, rigorous, exacting, restless, accepting artist, greedy in a good way for the few moments of exhilaration and insight that come from a lifetime of the serious, joyful, sometimes terrifying pursuit of the unknown. As the great scholar Albert Murray said, in taking the full measure of a jazz artist, you're looking at a pioneer, you're looking at an explorer, you're looking at an experimenter, you're looking at a scientist, because it is the creative process incarnate. I would add mathematician too, because tonight's extraordinary honoree understands the precise and yet ephemeral calculus, the organization and logic that connects music, the art of the invisible, he calls it, with all things, especially the one true equation of the universe: love multiplies. Wynton says it this way: jazz music celebrates life, human life, the range of it, the absurdity of it, the ignorance of it, the greatness of it, the intelligence of it, the sexuality of it, and it deals with it. In all of it, it deals with it. To follow all of this requires a great deal of sometimes solitary courage, which admirably he has, and liberating hard work. He knows the tyranny of our superficial binary systems. He told me once a great truth I've tried to carry into my own work. Sometimes a thing and the opposite of that thing can be true at the same time. And he has been unflinching in his representation of the Black experience in America. He has celebrated a story most of us treat as if it were some politically correct addendum to our national narrative, as if it were in the outer orbit of Pluto, and not as it is at the burning heart, the burning sun of our story. African Americans, he told me in an interview, are people who are American in the realist sense, but they've been denied access to a recognition as Americans. But that doesn't alter the fact that they are American. You know, we speak casually and often thoughtlessly about fellowship and brotherhood. We see that there is an age-old metaphorical meaning, but also a true usable meaning to the idea of brotherhood. Our honoree bridges them both, the symbolic and the practical. In his practice, he imparts to us difficult truths and a glimpse into the miraculous, the possible, attainable as Wynton Marsalis knows, in each moment. And the best part of that real brotherhood is that I count him as my brother, as he does me, and I love him. Please watch. That was wonderful, Wynton. You're doing what the rest of us can only dream of. Create art on the spot, in this moment. Thank you. As American Prairie builds a new park to preserve the prairie landscape for the generations to come, Wynton Marsalis has built an institution, a legacy to preserve the genius of America's unique art form for generations to come. By pursuing his vision in defiance of conventional wisdom and in succeeding beyond any possible expectation, he exemplifies the indomitable American spirit. It's a privilege to call him my friend and an honor to join with American Prairie in presenting him with the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize. We're far away tonight, but I've never felt closer. Wynton Marsalis, this prize is for you.
Ken, thank you so much. You know, you're my man and my brother, and we're united in this struggle to raise the consciousness of our nation. And it's been such an honor to know you all of these years and see your fantastic development. I'm deeply honored. Hello, and good evening, everyone. I want to thank y'all so much for being here tonight and for graciously presenting me with this award, the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize. Though I wish we could sit in community tonight, it still feels very good to celebrate and to be celebrated even virtually. As we are well aware, these are divisive and difficult times. It is a moment that continues to test the roots, resources, and the resolve of our nation. Well, we want to come together, but we always end up desperately searching the landscape for the language, the mechanics, and the systems that will enable us to improve the ritualized flaws that prevent us from enjoying a healthy civic life. Well, it's a time for a rebirth, a reconsidering, a renaissance. We're ready to find the intensity of discovery in a new vision of the future, one that accords, amidst all of the mesmerizing technological achievements of this age, the place of supreme honor to unrepentant expressions of our global humanity. I love the mission of the American Prairie Reserve, and I love the term rewilding. It sounds like something benign and dangerous, safe and reckless, well-behaved and unruly. It is truly New Orleanian. Rewilding introduces you to the better self you've forgotten. It is a nourishment and it's a healing. Ken Burns has achieved this concept so spectacularly in his films and for so long that our finest accolades are no longer sufficient. The genius of his work is its own compliment. Each new film rewilds our collective memory and leads us ever upwards with deeper understanding and greater confidence in the possibilities of our country and of our civilization. And of course, I'm honored to represent jazz. Jazz is an art capable of rewilding the individual and the collective soul. It is a lyrical and beautiful representation of basic American rights and responsibilities expressed in three fundamentals: improvisation, swing, and the blues. Well, improvisation is our freedom to be ourselves and to be creative. Swing is the responsibility to find and nurture balance in community with other individuals. And the blues, it gives us the acuity and the optimism to stay with things that we care about, even if they prove to be full of hardship. I deeply admire the work that the American Prairie Reserve has done to restore our prairie lands. Of course, the battle over this restoration is very complicated. Our country clearly believes in commercial exploitation and its attendant philosophies, but we have yet to grasp the central significance of civic investment to the mental, financial, and cultural health of our democracy. We're still quite young. But we must always be willing to fight to protect the defining elements of our national character. One day, I know the nation is going to be grateful for this legacy, as they will also continue to be thankful for the excellent and insightful canon of Ken Burns. His rightly celebrated work has given us a penetrating gaze into the hidden corridors of our soul. Ken searches tirelessly for the answer to one deceivingly simple question: who are we? Well, it's an answer that one person cannot possibly know, but every day gives us the opportunity to do what we can to be our very best selves. And the search is the power. I thank you so much for this honor. I'm deeply appreciative to receive this prize from an institution I respect, bearing the name of a genius I admire, and on behalf of a music that defines us at our best. Thank you.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you for your support. I hope you all have a beautiful night. Thank you.
How often at night, when the heavens are bright, I see the light of those flickering stars.
Thank you, everyone, for spending some of your evening with us tonight. We look forward to seeing you on the prairie. Good night.
If their glory exceeds that of love. Home, home on the range. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night.
Good night. Thank you for coming. Good night.
A discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.
American Prairie thanks you for watching this year's virtual presentation of the Ken Burns American Heritage Prize, celebrating the indomitable American spirit of Wynton Marsalis. We hope that you've been inspired by the passion and dedication of tonight's honoree. If you wish to support the work of American Prairie or learn more about opportunities to experience the prairie firsthand, please visit kenburnsprize.com. From the Great Plains of northern Montana and across the United States, good night.